Andrea Michelle Knabel was a 37-year-old from Louisville, Kentucky. She was the mother of two and a volunteer in the missing persons community. In the early morning of August 13th, 2019, Andrea left her sisters on foot, presumably to head back to her own home. Andrea's phone eventually pinged at her house, but no one actually saw her. She was never seen again. I'm Ed Densel, and this is Unfound. One of the toughest kinds of disappearances to diagnose, and I can admit one of the hardest to explain to criminology students, I know from experience, is one in which two totally different scenarios are possible, due to the information pointing equally at both choices. This is most likely to happen in a situation like today's disappearance, when the person could have walked off, or the person could have been picked up by some yet unknown person, where that individual could be a friend, enemy, or complete stranger. Some examples from Unfound's catalog are Jamie Bowen, Layla Faulkner, TJ Murray, and Dow Phillips. And we've covered many like this. What's most perplexing about this type is even if there are phone records and ping maps and social media tracking, that data only serves to complicate matters, not simplify them. This is the situation we have today with the disappearance of Andrea Knabel. We have information suggesting she most likely had someone pick her up. However, given how much walking she did that night, Andrea may have just decided to keep walking. And all of this is even more important because Andrea is one of our own. And now a summary of the case. This is brought to you by my friend Megan Linez's website, charleyproject.org. Andrea Knabel was one of the most giving people any of her friends and family knew. She gave as a mother, raising two boys the best she could. Andrea gave as an employee, working for a health insurance company with the hopes of getting as many people care as possible. She gave in her private life as well, using her spare time to volunteer for missing persons organizations and spreading the word about disappearances. Yet, in doing all this giving, Andrea might have been a little too understanding of people's faults and bad choices, causing her to be surrounded by people who only had their own interests in mind. So on August 12th, 2019, Andrea was at her mother's house with her sister Sarah and Sarah's fiancé, Ethan. This night and into the early morning of August 13th, Andrea was upset about many things. She walked to her sister Erin's house. Erin drove Andrea back home. But not long after, Andrea showed up again at Erin's around 1 a.m. This time, Erin would not allow Andrea into the house due to her behavior. After being refused entry, phone pings show that Andrea went back to her mother's and stayed in the area for at least a couple of hours. However, neither Sarah nor Ethan claim Andrea came inside. By this time, they were asleep, and Andrea's mother wasn't there. Andrea was never seen again. However, at least two people have been tracked down to say that Andrea called them in that 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. time frame. She was looking for a ride, but they did not pick her up. Andrea's disappearance got a lot of attention when it happened, due to her being known as a missing persons advocate. In fact, besides Andrea's own family, some of the people who have kept Andrea's name in the news the most are those people who volunteered with her in the Louisville area. We applaud their efforts. Now Unfound gets its own chance to push the investigation forward. This starts by trying to answer these 3 questions. Number 1, is it a coincidence or was it planned that Andrea's phone went off right around the time she disappeared? Number 2, how should Andrea's knowledge of disappearances affect our assessments of her case? And number 3, why have Andrea's phone records not been able to solve her disappearance quickly since the police have them? Andrea's family is convinced she got picked up that morning, but they are unsure who did so. The guests for this episode are Andrea's father, Michael Knabel, and her sister, Erin Knabel. Unfound News. This is the first episode of February, so you know what that means. Newsletter. For this one, I detailed my outlook for Unfound for 2022. I gave all recipients my insight into most parts of Unfound, the episodes, the YouTube channel, etc. And I list some changes they can expect. To get on the email list, contact me at unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. Next, and also because it's the first of the month, I hope you watched the most recent episode of Unfound Now. I discussed the November 2021 disappearance of Bo Man from Studio City, California. Please watch the video and give it a thumbs up on our YouTube channel. Finally, yes, I'm still in Pennsylvania. Yes, it's cold. Yes, it snowed. And it's going to snow some more tomorrow. But I will probably be here until the end of February as I serve as my dad's chauffeur. Where you can find Unfound. Unfound supports accounts on iTunes, Pandora, Audible, Podomatic, Spotify, iHeart, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Deezer, and YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, please join us for the Unfound Live Show. Watch, ask questions, and give the show a thumbs up. Contribute to Unfound at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. You can also contribute at PayPal, paypal.me/Unfound Podcast. I also need to give a huge shout out to all the people who have monetarily contributed using SuperChat during the live show on Wednesday nights. Thank you for watching, and thank you for donating. The email address, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. Merchandise, the books at amazon.com in both ebook and print form. Do not forget the reviews. The website, theunfoundpodcast.com. And please mention Unfound at all true crime websites and forums. Thank you. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the father of Andrea Knabel, Mike Knabel, and Andrea's sister, Erin. Erin and Mike, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you.
Thank you, Edward.
You're very welcome. Let's start here. It's very unusual. The listeners know I haven't interviewed too many people at one time, but it's maybe happened 5 or 6 times over the last 5 years. But let's talk about, just the general Knabel family. How many children, the general dynamics of the family, everybody, the kids growing up, interests and things like that. Why don't we start? And maybe, Mike, you can go first.
Okay. I would say we were a very traditional family growing up. I married a young woman that was from the neighborhood. We bought the traditional house. Andrea was our first child, followed by Erin and Sarah. And oddly enough, we all went to the same schools too.
Wow.
We all grew up in the same neighborhood. Andrea was born first, I believe it was 1981, and she would now be 40 years old.
Okay.
Hard to believe. And Aaron would be second, and then of course Sarah is the baby in the family.
Mike, you the only guy. All your wife and the children, all women.
That's right, and that is a bit of an unusual situation for me since I grew up in a household with 5 boys in the family. So it was indeed a shock for me to be around women everywhere.
Okay, all right.
Even the dog.
Oh my. Okay, so you didn't even get the dog, Mike. You didn't even get to pick a guy for the dog. Okay.
No, I didn't.
All right, gotcha. Aaron, maybe you can tell me, what are the age differences? How much older is Andrea than you are? And then, of course, your younger sister. What is the age separation there?
Okay. So Andrea was 3 years older than me. I was actually born on her 3rd birthday. So that was always a fun situation growing up. And then Sarah was just a year and a half younger than me. So growing up, Andrea was it felt like she was a lot older than us, even though it was just 3 years. So she was kind of like the leader of the pack is how it felt. And Sarah and I kind of trailed behind her and followed her lead a lot of the times. It was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with my sisters growing up.
You and Andrea have the same birthday?
Yes.
Wow. I'm sure there's a story behind that. I don't know if we want to get into that in this interview with that. How did you, of course, when you're born, you don't realize that, but how did you handle that? How did Andrea handle that? At some point, maybe if she was 3 years older, like when you're 9 and 6, 10 and 7, when those birthdays, really, really start to mean something. How did you two handle sharing that day?
Well, for me, that was just my life. That's all I knew. So I loved it. It was a lot of fun. Andrea told me one day that I was her favorite her best birthday present ever, and that's something that I've always held really dear to my heart. Just thinking of that, so I'm wanting to keep that going and continue to be her best present by helping her now. Okay. But yeah, we have some funny stories. I always used to tease her because when we were little, she opened my New Kids on the Block toy. When we were opening presents, one time she accidentally opened my present, so I used to joke with her about that.
And I'm old enough to remember when New Kids on the Block were actually popular. So, okay, New Kids on the Block, like late 80s, early 90s. Okay, I remember that. The three of these 3 girls, Mike, would you say, and maybe, of course, Aaron, probably wants to answer this too. It's kind of the same personalities, different personalities, same interests. How would you, what would you say, comparing Andrea to Aaron and your other daughter, similar personalities or a wide array, or how would you explain it?
Well, no, they all 3 were completely different. Andrea was, I'd say, probably really well-rounded, very, very precocious, ahead of her time academically, socially, in every way possible. I know the show we made with the Discovery Group predicted, showed that she was a black sheep. She was exactly the opposite. She was the person ahead of her time. She got special treatment because she was special. She was extremely smart, and we even have to move her out of the school to find something that challenged her. So Andrea was that person. Aaron was more of the middle child, very artistic and colorful, and liked to do things artistically. And then Sarah was she was somewhat well-rounded, but she was very good in school as well. But she was pretty much the jock in the family. She was very, very talented. Sports-wise, and then also made very good grades in school. So all 3 were completely different. As a father, you love them all the same, but they all have different talents, but in my eyes, they're very, very equal.
Aaron, would you say that Andrew was more like, if you can answer this, was more like your mother or your father?
I've always said that she's a lot like Dad, and so much that I feel like they would butt heads, just because of how much alike they are with, they can both be very strong-willed and determined. And that's an amazing quality to have because it causes you to be very driven in life. They're both very outgoing, and they both make me laugh. And the positivity that they both bring to the table has always been something that can keep me going in my hard times. So I feel that even though towards the last couple of years that we saw Andrea, she was closer to my mom. I felt like she always had the same qualities as my dad.
Huh. All right, so that's okay. Thank you for that. So let's talk about Andrea, like during her teenage years. Interests, you've already said, very intelligent. You had to maybe find things to challenge her, maybe educationally. Does that mean that she went to like a private school, or did she end up taking college classes early? And then, you've talked about your youngest daughter, Sarah, being into sports. Well, what was Andrea into? Let's cover all that.
Well, Andrea did some sports too, as did all three of the children. But some children do it just for participation, and some get very, very serious, wanting to maybe make a name for themselves in college or try for a scholarship or something like that. Andrea was just well-rounded. I think she used that sports-wise. But no, Andrea and all three of my daughters went to a private elementary school.
Oh, okay.
And Andrea made straight A's without even studying to bring books home. And so we took her out of there and put her in a public middle school that is a science magnet that was very challenging. And a lot of people tried to get their kids in there because it was so challenging. And I do believe Andrea met her match there. Actually, she ran into a lot of kids that were smarter than her. I'm not sure that was a good thing or not.
Right. Okay, I gotcha. Aaron, the way you think about Andrea at that time, her being 3 years older than you, did you share a lot in common? Of course, you get to that point, maybe, 14 and 11, the differences, start, both physically, emotionally, mentally. Did you notice that? How did you handle that as she got into her teen years?
I know that I feel like when she became a teenager, of course she had moments where she wanted to be with her friends, where she kind of branched out more like teenagers can do. But she also would spend time with me, and she taught me a lot. I remember liking grunge music because of her, for example, and Alanis Morissette. I guess I kind of copied her. It was something I continued to do into my teenage years, but she would teach me how to put my makeup on and hair and give me makeovers. So that was always a lot of fun. She taught me how to dance. Those were some things we did when we were teenagers. And when she started driving, I always thought it was really cool that I had a sister that could drive. She would take me everywhere that most people, with their parents, would be taking them places. But I had Andrea.
Okay.
That was a lot of fun.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. So she's all into this. We'll get into the job that she had actually as an adult, but in high school, did she have a part-time job, or was it all just, schoolwork and stuff?
I can go.
Please.
Here, go ahead.
Yeah, I know she worked at White Mountain Creamery. She worked at the Ferris wheel at Kentucky Kingdom, like an amusement park, basically. So, just fun teenage jobs really is what she did back then. And she'd hang out with her friends a lot. She was going to, I think Assumption at that point. I would say in her teenage years, she probably focused a little bit less on school and more on social life and being with your friends and stuff like that.
Okay. Now, when she got to the end of her high school career, Mike, did she go to college right away, or did she take a year off? What did she do there?
Yeah, she went right into college, and she was usually working at the same time. And I remember a couple of jobs. Aaron, you can help me out here. The one I remember the most is her CVS job, where she was working as a store clerk there. Do you remember that, Aaron?
Yeah, I know one point when she first started out at CVS, she was held up in the store. So someone came in and attempted to rob her at gunpoint.
Oh, my.
Yeah, so that was a scary time for her. And she continued working there. It didn't faze her, I guess, too much because she stayed at it. But she told me that they would watch people and catch people shoplifting and call the police on them. So I feel like Andrea was brave, even though, scary things happened. She still continued to do the best she could at her job.
Okay.
But she ended up becoming I think it was like a regional sales manager job where she would manage several stores in like the Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky, in those 3 states.
Was this after she graduated college?
No, she was going to college at this point.
Wow, she was doing both.
Yes, and she had other side jobs at different times. And I felt like she was very busy.
Okay.
And
Where did she get her higher education, Mike?
She graduated from the University of Louisville right here in town.
Wow.
So, as did I. That's the same place I went. Okay. And Andrea's mother as well.
Okay, impressive. That's a good school. Okay, great. Okay, so she, what year, just, in general, close as you can get, what year did she graduate college?
Let me think. So she graduated from Assumption in 2000. I know that. And I think she because of all the working she did, I don't think that she graduated in exactly 4 years. So it may have been about 2005 or 6. Does that sound right to you, Dad?
That would be my guess, and I think it would be right in there. Yes.
I'd say about 2005.
Okay, so she gets out, and what career did she go into? Where did she start working? Let's say 2007. Where did she start working? I know eventually she ended up working from Humana, and maybe the reason I remember that is I used to have them as my private health insurance, but not now. But did she go right to work with Humana, or did she start somewhere else and then eventually get there?
I feel like I was just counting up the years, and I feel like she went straight into Humana because, well, I take that back. For a while, she was at CVS actually for a very long time. So I think for the first couple of years after graduating, she was still at CVS. She ended up leaving that job. I remember her telling me that she wanted to try something different, and then she went to Humana. So it was probably about 2 years or so after CVS.
All right.
And it might be important to know that she was extremely independent, and we're not really sure she liked being a corporate person. Also, added to the fact that even when she was working for some of these places like Humana, maybe CVS, she might have had a side job or two. And so that would not be unusual for her at all. So she was pretty much a go-getter and trying to do whatever it took and trying to find her way. But I believe at some point she wanted to become some sort of entrepreneur and have that as her main job rather than work for a corporation.
Okay, I know the feeling. All right. So let's move on to this. So we've talked about her job, very educated, goes to Louisville, of course, a very good university. Everybody's heard of Louisville. And let's talk a little bit about her personal life. She gets into her 20s, boyfriends. Does she get married? I know that she has 2 children who will eventually talk about at least a little bit. We don't have to mention their names or anything, of course. But what about relationships or private life?
Aaron, you should handle that. You know more about her boyfriends than I do.
Yeah, I feel like Andrea, she's always been a very kind and loving person, and I feel like she was looking for love, but it never really quite worked out. And it could be partially because of how independent she is, and she's very, it's my way or the highway. So sometimes it had to be the highway for So I feel like she was looking for love, and it just didn't quite work out when she tried it. So I know that she dated her first serious boyfriend for about 8 years, and they didn't work out.
Okay. And so was that like in college? Did they meet in school, or was that after that, do you think?
It was probably through college and and up until shortly after college.
Okay.
They broke up.
Okay. Did they have any kids together?
No.
Okay. Well, let's just move on to, talking about her children. When did she have her first child? I understand that she has 2 children, one with different men. Let's just talk a little bit about those relationships. Once again, we do not have to get into the children's names or the men's names, but, just either one of you give maybe the audience a little idea about either of these relationships. How did they go? Anything like that.
I'll start out with Aaron because it's important in the family dynamics to understand my relationship as a father to Andrea. She tried to date some really nice guys, some guys that might have went to the college and things like that, and a lot of those relationships didn't seem to work out. So she seemed to be attracted to people that were fun and not necessarily educated to the extent she was, and maybe not in her socioeconomic track she was on or anything like that. So she and I, somewhat butted heads about some of her choices, but I didn't stop her. I tried to let her find her own way. That's kind of what my father did. He let me make my mistakes, knowing that I would probably figure it out. And I'm not sure she really figured it out to the extent that I was happy about it. But then again, it's her life, and she made a lot of choices, and I wasn't really happy with a lot of them. Okay. But anyway, her first child would now be 10 years old. Okay. And he was just over here this week because of COVID. The kids were back at home schooling, and the father was working, and I'm working from home, so I just had him come over here and have his classes on the computer over here. So he seems to be doing fine. He's adjusted quite well, but there are issues right behind the seemingly normal situation. I've seen him break down out of nowhere one time that really surprised me, and it was very, very, very sad for me to see that. And I was hoping he was doing better, but he seems to be doing well. But there's some struggle behind it, and obviously, it's I'm sure it's hurting him a great deal. So, yeah. And Aaron, you want to handle the second son?
Yeah, I feel like Andrea, when she met her second child's father, she kind of went for opposites. He was kind of like a country boy, and he lived in Shepherdsville, so that was a longer drive to get to Andrea's house. Not too bad. That was about a 30-minute drive when she lived out in Shepherdsville. That's just outside of Louisville. So I feel like they eventually didn't get along and broke up, which is, somewhat normal, I feel like, these days. But I feel like she had a decent co-parenting relationship with both of them, and they were making it work. She had a 50-50 parenting schedule where she would see her children every 2 days.
Okay. So neither of... with any of either of these guys or any actual, I guess what we call custody arrangements on paper or anything, Andrea just was able to work out the situation with both of them without getting a court or anything involved?
For her older son, they ended things, I think, in a pretty friendly way, like a cordial way, I guess you could say, to where they worked it all out outside of court. Okay. But her younger child's father and her did use court to set up their 50-50 parenting schedule.
Okay. And you said that the first relationship broke up friendly. What about the second one? How was Andrea on terms with the second guy?
It was probably a little bit less friendly, but still in just a normal breakup, I would say. Okay.
All right. And when would you say, if you can remember, Aaron or Mike, the second guy, when did they break up? Was it right in 2019, 2018? Do you remember?
It was a while. It was a few years before that. I'll have to think about that.
Okay, a few years before. And, of course, we're going to get up to 2019 here very quickly, but you're understanding the way you see it now. Was she involved with anybody at the time of her disappearance?
She was dating around. I feel like Andrea kind of her last serious relationship was in 2000. It ended in 2018, and my feelings on it is that she was more guarded after that. She was guarding her heart more. So she was choosing for the last year that we knew we were with Andrea. She was more guarded, and she was not getting into a serious relationship. I feel like she was just kind of dating around at that point.
Okay.
That's what we've learned.
Okay. Let's move on to this, and this is probably, it's very, of course, unique, and of course very close to me, being that I am in the missing persons community. I've done almost 240 interviews, and I know a lot of families who have lost loved ones to disappearances. How did Andrea get involved in the missing persons community?
I can take that, Dad.
Sure, go ahead.
I know that she met Suzette when she was doing a serving job. That was one of her jobs she had when she left Humana. And Suzette volunteered with Missing in America and Nancy Schaefer. Mm-hmm. So I feel like Andrea has always kind of been the person that'll drop everything and help out whoever she can. So it probably just made sense to her to go with it when she learned about that from Suzette.
And what year do you think that was?
Let's see. I would have to probably get more information on that from Suzette.
Just an example. Was she just, before she disappeared, was it a year, 5 years, 10 years?
If I had to guess, I would say around 5 years, maybe.
5 years, okay. Does that, Mike, the way you know Andrea, your daughter, did that surprise you when you found out that she was taking an interest in that?
You know what? A woman of her age at that point doesn't necessarily tell her father all the intimate details of what's going on in her life.
That's true, yeah.
There's no doubt about that. But you know what? I have a very clear recollection of discussing some of her involvement at a Christmas party in 2017. And she was very proud of what she was doing, about volunteering for this group and searching for missing people. And she had big plans. She wanted to take this further, and she wanted to expand this. And I was quite intrigued, but the practical father wants her to have a real job.
Yes.
And while
you aren't the only father that feels like that, Mike.
That's right. But I remember feeling that way, and that's the way I felt. That's all I can tell you. But I was intrigued about the story, and our Christmas parties are wild and crazy. There's 40 to 50 people there sometimes. Oh my. And it is so the conversation didn't go on in depth, but a very, very clear conversation at that party in 2017, and I still recall how proud she was of her work with that. That's my recollection.
Did she, once again, if either of you can remember, for me, I'll tell you my story in 15 seconds. I'm 51 years old. I took an interest in Search Of when I was a little kid, Leonard Nimoy. It's kind of a mystery show, and then Unsolved Mysteries and Cops. Then I eventually got around to starting this podcast in 2016. As a little girl, as a teenager, did she also show an interest like in mysteries, things like that?
We did watch Unsolved Mysteries a lot when we were little.
Okay.
And let's see what else. X-Files. So I guess she was interested in mysteries, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was love the X-Files. A huge fan of that show back in the 90s for sure. So I can certainly...
We used to watch it every Friday at Dad's house when we were little.
Yep, that's right. Fox Mulder, Dana Scully, fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, so
and I happen to like that too, by the way.
Yeah, and both of you should know I have a signed picture in my condo of them in a scene from one of the episodes, and they both signed it. I got that from over at Disney like 25 years ago or something like that, but I have it hung in my condo. So let's move on now to this. I think we've given the audience a very well-rounded view of Andrea, talking about both her personal life, public life, professional life, some of her interests and everything. So let's move up to 2019. But I think we do understand, and I know a lot of people know about Andrea's disappearance, for a lot of different reasons. I think you've done a lot of good publicity regarding her disappearance, but I also think that it probably helps that she was a known person in the missing person community trying to help families. And when one of our own goes missing, that certainly catches everybody's attention. But in 2019, though, it does seem to me that there were some things going on in her life. And let's just start here. And we do not have to touch upon these things for very long, but I think that it's important we at least discuss them for a little bit. How did she become unemployed?
Aaron, do you know for sure? Because I am still uncertain. What I can tell the audience is that there were two major layoffs at Humana. One was maybe 2,500, and there was shortly thereafter there was one of 1,500.
Wow.
I've heard that she may have been part of that group, but I'm not quite sure that's absolutely true. Aaron, can you confirm or deny that?
Well, she told us that she was laid off from Humana. I've spoken to her, some of her friends from Humana that said they think that she might have been fired for not coming into work on time and things like, I guess it'd be attendance.
Wow.
So I'm not sure which one it is. If she wasn't actually laid off, I can't really blame her for that. You know, a lot of people tell their family that they were laid off.
Well, I have to ask if it wasn't that she was laid off, that maybe it was something else. Does that surprise you, or that if she did get fired for not showing up? If that is, I mean, I don't know. You would certainly know more about it than I would. Is that something that would surprise you?
Well, I was with Andrea almost daily, if not several times a week, and I felt like sometimes she would run herself. You know, she would do too much, I guess you could say.
Okay.
And, you know, kind of run herself ragged sometimes, where I felt like she just needed to take it easy, you know. So it would make sense really either way. I could see her being laid off or the other one. Okay. So I'm not really sure.
Okay. All right. So that is something, I guess we're doing this interview on January 23rd, 2022. So that's just something that is not totally clear even now.
Yes, I heard something a little bit different. If I can clarify,
go ahead.
I heard she was doing some work from home, and she may have not been approaching that with enough discipline to continue to do that too. So it is still unclear to the family exactly what happened. But the word that was out there was that she was part of the layoff. I heard some. Well, it looks like both Aaron and I both have heard some things that may have not been true. Okay. Go ahead.
All right. Let's move on to this, and this is something that the listeners, of course, know. Before we ever do these interviews, I talk to the guests at least once or more times before we do an official interview like this. And both of you, in the talks that we've had, talked about how she had new but bad friends. How did this happen?
Aaron, you saw them much more than I did, and I wasn't happy when I saw them. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, like Dad said earlier, sometimes she would go with friends that were fun and, you know, made her laugh, and that would take precedence over other qualifications that, you know, most people would have. And like, for example, I would say that if say I was looking for a boyfriend, if they didn't meet certain criteria, that they were not someone that I would date. Yeah. Andrea, I guess, would want to help people sometimes, and I noticed that her boyfriend would sometimes be someone that she wanted to help.
Okay.
And so, like, fixer upper, I don't know what the correct word is, but she would want to help people, and sometimes it was her boyfriend who she would want to help. And I loved Andrea. I wanted her to be happy. I could see that she was happy with the person she was with. And so I just tried, you know, I thought to myself, like, I'm not going to judge. It's not what I would do, but I can't, you know, I might as well just be accepting and love my sister for who she is. So I just kind of went with it. And, but I feel like these people sometimes caused her problems, her boyfriend and friends that she was having, and it hurt me to see her going through that. So I felt like she would give this person the world, and they would take and take and take, is how it felt. And it just tore me up inside to see that. And I would tell her how I felt, but also I would listen to her and just try to be there for her. It was hard.
Okay.
I mean,
when you say bad friends, do you mean people that might have been doing illegal things, might have been into drugs? Because once again, I think both of you used the same exact term when I spoke to both of you, kind of new but bad friends. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Well, I was kind of, I don't know. Andrea kind of looked at me as like a straight-laced type of person.
Yeah.
So she wouldn't really do that stuff in front of me, but it was evident to me that something wasn't exactly right. You know, like what I saw Andrea do was every now and then she would drink, and that's about it. Like maybe once every few weeks, but
yeah,
it seemed like something more was going on behind the scenes. Like sometimes like the person she was dating was, had been in jail, for different issues they were having. So obviously something was going on that we didn't really know about, is how it felt.
All right.
Not what you'd expect out of a straight A student and a college graduate. And she would keep most of these guys away from me because she knew where I stood on it. And unfortunately, a lot of times that falls on the father to tell them what's going on, what the truth is, and that she would become the type of people she put herself around if she stayed around them long enough.
Right.
And it seems some of that may have happened, unfortunately, although there is signs that maybe she was making some big changes right before she left, and I believe Aaron found some proof of that after she had left. I believe there were job interviews coming lined up already, people calling her back and things like that. But I didn't approve of these people. I was always cordial whenever one was brought around, but wasn't happy, and there's nobody that could talk me into being happy about that. And just I guess the way fathers are, most fathers are anyway. I would think.
One of her boyfriends, for example, would constantly accuse her of cheating, and she would be just in the house making dinner like a normal mother would do, and she would just look at me and like brush it off like it was no big deal, but I knew it hurt her feelings. And sometimes they would take her phone and take her laptop. One of her boyfriends would do that, and it was really hard seeing her go through that.
Wow.
I feel like a lot of women are like this, where we're kind of nurturing personalities. And when you're like that, sometimes you can attract people that take advantage of that. I've experienced that in my life, and I was trying to give Andrea that advice. Like, Andrea, you can't be this way to everyone, because not everyone's going to truly appreciate you and give it back to you. Some people just want to keep taking. And so I was trying to help her with that, help her have like healthy boundaries, and help her notice when someone truly didn't love you back. But I feel like sometimes people just have to experience it for themselves. You can't always convince people to do the right thing for themselves.
Let's move on to this. Now, being that we've talked about, you've mentioned, one of the guys that she was around was in jail, and there might have been some things that you suspected some things, but you didn't necessarily see anything. Do you believe that Andrea had developed some sort of addiction before she went missing?
We were worried about that, and I think Dad actually asked her if she would go to a treatment facility for addiction, and she denied it. I think it hurt her feelings. So the way we looked at it is like, she's an adult. Obviously, we can't force her to do that, and she's telling us that she's not addicted to anything. So maybe it's mental illness causing this. So my mom would go with her to see a therapist and to different doctors. Like you start out at the primary doctor and go to the specialist that they tell you to go to. So we were basically just trying anything that she was willing to do. We didn't know because we didn't see any signs of it, but we did know that something was not right. Okay. And it was just, I feel like we were beginning to try and figure it out, because it's easy to hide certain things from your family when you don't live with them. And when she got evicted and moved in with Mom in summer of 2019, that's when we kind of we were able to do more with her, because she was there all the time. We were able to convince her to go to the doctors and this and that. So I feel like we were beginning to get it figured out and help her at this point.
Mike, where was she living before she moved in that summer? And maybe I should ask, being that she got laid off, Mike, if you know, what was she doing for money during this time? Where was she living before she moved into that place the summer of 2019, and what was she doing for money?
Well, Aaron would be better at this, but she was sharing a home at a western portion of the county. That's not a great place, but maybe it was a neighborhood, and she was sharing it with a friend of hers. They both had kids, and I think that girl moved out, and then Aaron lost the place. I think it's important to know when we talk about drugs. Yeah. I've never seen her do any illegal drugs. We did see some prescription drugs that she had in her room after she had went missing, but these were legal prescriptions, and they could have been being abused. And so that is a possibility, and we don't know. That could have been a gateway to other things. And let's face it, when you get down, maybe to the extent she was after what was going on in her life and the burdens she was carrying, that could lead you to do things you might not normally do. So
I guess what we're also saying, though, is even today in 2022, there's just a suspicion. It's not like anybody actually saw her abusing anything. It very well may be that she didn't have an addiction.
Right.
Okay.
And one thing I feel is important, it's a testimony to Andrea's character, is that the roommate that she was friends with, she met this girl because she was dating her ex. So in other words, Andrea's boyfriend and her broke up.
Mm-hmm.
and then that guy's ex-girlfriend became friends with Andrea, So Andrea's like not the kind of person that like is going to hold grudges. Most people are not very fond of their ex's ex. So they ended up becoming so close and friends that they became roommates. So Andrea's ex-boyfriend's children were living with her, with his ex and her. So
wow. Okay.
So to this day, that's who I consider Andrea's best friend, is her ex-boyfriend's ex-girlfriend. So Andrea's the kind of person, and she kind of taught me to be that way too. Like, don't hold grudges with people. Try to see what people have in common with you and find common ground. And Andrea saw her as a single mother like her, who they both needed help at the time. So they were like, why not help each other out? And it ended up working great for them for a long time. But she moved out. I think she found a boyfriend, and they moved in together. And Andrea tried to find a new roommate, but it just didn't work out, and she ended up getting evicted.
Okay. And that's when she moved in, changed and then moved in with her grandmother in the summer? Grandmother?
Her mom. Yeah, our mother, yes.
Your mother, okay. All right, so we have that. And maybe I should ask this again. And what was she doing for money during this time?
She had various jobs. She's had serving jobs, I know, like a waitress. She also would do Uber Eats. She did various jobs. Some of them I felt were probably more work than it was worth, but it was something that she thought was interesting and worthwhile. So she would go to a warehouse. I'm not sure how she found out about this work, but she took me there one time where you go, and it kind of reminded me of Storage Wars. Are you familiar with that show? I
am, yes.
Yeah, so instead of like a storage unit, it would be pallets of merchandise. Like it might be coffee makers, TVs, just random household products. It could be monitors, a lot of different things. So you can only see what's on the outside of the pallet. Like it would be wrapped in plastic on a pallet. And you kind of go around and look inside of them and see what you can see. The goal would be to find one that was mostly filled with expensive stuff.
Of course.
Because or like bigger products because then it would be quicker to sell.
Yeah.
But you get this bulk at a pretty cheap rate. Sometimes it would just be returns, like things that people didn't want, and they would return it to the store. She would take each item out and make sure it was working, make sure all the pieces were there, and then she would resell it. And many of the people who have helped me and reached out to me to tell me that they knew Andrea, or people that she met through this, people that remembered her and really liked her a lot. She's the kind of person that would, if she was selling you a toaster, she'd stop and talk to you for 30 minutes, She was very well liked and easy to get along with. A lot of the people who she worked with because of Uber Eats would be like people at restaurants where she'd pick up the food from. So in my opinion, she would make a strong impression on people, even if she just met them briefly, because I've had so many people tell me they knew her through these jobs.
All right, let's move on to this. I know many people are familiar with Andrea's disappearance, and something that you can read in a variety of places is this infection, and I think that it's important because I guess we would call it technically the day before she went missing, she did go to the hospital. What was this infection? What was going on there?
Dad, do you want me to go?
I think you would know better. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So she was not sure what it was. She had different ideas on what she thought it was, and we kind of disagreed with it. She thought that she had some kind of infection or problem, and we would tell her, like, no, let's just go to the doctor and see what's going on, because skin conditions do run in our family. Like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with eczema.
I am, sure.
So, yeah, so I've had that my entire life. Out of me, Andrea, and Sarah, I think I was hit with it the worst. Like, my hands would burn so much that, like, I remember in church I couldn't cross my fingers, like, to prayer. Like, I couldn't do it. It hurt so much. So because of that, like, my whole life I've always known how to take care of it, like hypoallergenic soaps and lotions and everything. And I know I would know to go to the dermatologist right away if it started to act up. Well, Andrea, I feel like she had like a mild form of it, a little bit behind her ear, but that's about it. And I feel like it's very possible that in her adult life, that's when it flared up, because a lot of different things can cause it, like hormones, stress, allergies. So I think it's possible that she could have had a flare up, and maybe since she didn't have it very severely like I did, she wasn't familiar with how to take care of it, and it kind of was very upsetting to her because it was on her face. And but people have also speculated that it's because of drugs, and like I said, we just didn't know. It's possible that it could have been from drugs. We don't know.
Do you know, in the days leading up to her disappearance, did she get any kind of treatment for that? And even that day, the 12th, when she went to the hospital, do you have any idea what kind of medicine they gave her or anything like that?
She would say that the rash on her face was painful. So I remember her telling me that the medicine that she put on it would help with the pain. So I'm not sure if it was like, how Neosporin has like a pain relief in it. I'm not sure if it was something like that, but possibly stronger. I'm not positive, but I know that my mom and her had been going to a specialist, and that night at dinner, when my mom brought Chinese food over just before the doctor's visit, Andrea, Sarah, and Ethan and Mom, they were all talking about how they think she needs to go to the doctor, but they were encouraging her to see a psychiatrist. Basically, like they think she needed to continue that. And she was like, "Well, I just want to go to the doctor for my face. I'm not happy with what the last doctor said. I want to go tonight." So
all right, we'll get to the 12th. All right, so she has this, maybe it could have been something that's genetic, I guess, or it could have been a real infection. Just not totally sure, but it sounds to me like right here in 2022 that you're thinking maybe you're leaning more toward this is something that's just genetic.
Yeah, well, to this day I'm still not exactly sure. I feel like trying different things to treat it that was not working. And like we were all trying to tell her, just leave it alone.
Yeah.
And do whatever the doctor says to do. So it was hard to say we were at the very beginning of trying to figure it out, you know?
Okay.
It's important to know that she was irritating it herself too. She was
picking at it.
She was mistreating it. That's right. And it got worse.
Right.
And that's why she needed to go to the hospital to have them look at it in emergency room. And that's what she did that night.
Good point. All right. So it could have been something very small, but obsessing on it maybe made it worse.
Yes.
Possible.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Mike, on a scale maybe of 1 to 10, let's do it that way. In going into August of 2019, on a scale 1 to 10, 1 being not worried at all, 10 being very, 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 very worried, how concerned were you about your daughter Andrea in August of 2019? What number would you give?
I was an 8.
Oh, yeah?
I was predicting something to happen to her. I even said to people, I know I said it to one of my brothers. I said, if she doesn't change, something awful is going to happen. And I remember about 2 weeks before Andrea was missing, she came to one of our events. I teach kids, including hers and Aaron's, tennis, which is one of my hobbies. Anyway, Andrea kind of showed up unexpectedly. And anyway, very, very happy to see her. Anyway, we had further conversation, and to the extent I was concerned, I offered her help. And that didn't quite get mentioned either. It mentioned when I read her the riot act about where she was. But I offered her help, had a place for her to actually go to receive treatment. And so that just tells you where I was. I was extremely concerned. It wasn't a 10 because nothing immediately was happening, but I saw the writing on the wall, and I don't know, maybe I felt it too. I felt what was happening, and I didn't like the direction, and I didn't like the fact that she wasn't in agreement that anything needed to be, needed to change. The direction needed to change, and I couldn't even get her to agree to that. So that was extremely worrisome for me.
All right. So even when what you're talking about, these tennis lessons, she shows up, and you make the suggestion, and she resists you. She thinks that, I don't know what you're talking about, Dad. I'm fine.
Well, there was some mention of there, but it was on a phone conversation after that.
Okay, all right.
That had happened, and she rejected any help whatsoever. She is a very proud person. She thought she could handle any problem, no matter what it was, and she was carrying an incredible burden when she left us, and much more so. And I found out many, many things that I didn't know about, and it was really heartbreaking to see what she was carrying around at the time.
Okay, Aaron, same way, like 1 to 10, you were about an 8 as well.
I feel like I was probably more worried because I saw everyone doing the best they can. Sarah, Mom, Ethan, Dad, like everybody who loved Andrea was trying, and I feel like she didn't see the urgency or how important it was. So I was very worried. I was thinking like maybe she'll end up in jail or something, or because she would never ever be homeless. She would always have all of us. She has a huge family. I was hoping that whatever it was that caused her to snap out of it would be something where she would be okay. That's why I say jail, because that's like something that would be really major for her. Yeah. But it could be a turning point for her. I fully, just because of the crowd she was around, and I mean, we didn't go too much into how much these people would hurt her, but she had one of her friends steal all the TVs in her home. And she knew it was that person because it was the only one who knew her exact schedule and how long she would be gone from the house at the time. Mm-hmm. So that's just an example of like some of the people she was around, so it scared me that, people that were doing this bad stuff was at her house and around, just, you can get in trouble just by knowing people like that or get hurt. So I was just hoping whatever it is something that she can recover from and be okay from. And I felt like I would talk to her, but I could see how she was not handling it well. So I tried to just let her vent most of the time and brainstorm, how can I help her? What can I do? But it was very, very hard because I had just gotten out of a divorce at the time and just started to get back on my feet and got my own place. So it was very stressful for me and overwhelming because I wanted to fix her problems, but I also didn't want to create problems for myself and ruin my own life.
Maybe I should ask you this. In all of this, all of these troubles that she had in those last few years before she went missing, any problems with the law? Any charges against her, any time spent in jail, anything like that?
No.
None. Okay.
I don't know of any either.
Okay. Let's move up to now August 12th, 2019. What do you two know about this day? I just have it, of course, in this outline that we are following for this interview. We have Ethan, we have Sarah, and we have Andrea. What did they do? And, of course, then we'll get to the hospital. What is your understanding about Andrea's movements and interactions on August 12th?
So what Andrea told me that night, and it also matched what Sarah and my mom said, is that they were sitting at the kitchen table. So Andrea was living with mom because she was evicted, of course, just to give you an idea of what was happening.
Yeah.
Sarah and Ethan live in Lexington. They've lived there for like over a decade, but they came in town to remodel my mom's bathrooms. The bathrooms were the original ones since the house was built in like 1940 something.
Oh my.
So they had problems just from being as old as they were, and it just needed to be done. So we were all thrilled that she was finally doing something to the house. Andrea, Sarah, and I, we all joked about it. But anyways, so the way Sarah and Ethan were planning on remodeling these bathrooms, neither one would be usable during the time. So my mom would come and eat dinner with them or like bring them food and stuff that they needed. And then she would leave for the night after that and stay with friends and then go to work the next day, so that she would have a usable shower and toilet and everything. So that's why things were the way they were. So at dinner time on August 12th, it was Sarah, Ethan, our mother, and Andrea. Mom had brought Chinese over for dinner, and I guess they began talking about Andrea's problems, which that was a very common topic. It was something that we all talked about a lot, because just in talking to Andrea in normal conversation, we would be like, Andrea, no, that's not how that should be. You need to do this instead. Like it would keep coming up. Yeah. So we were talking about it and saying she needed to see a psychiatrist. Well, she did not agree with that at the time, and I guess things got a little bit heated. She kind of lashed out at mom and said some rude things to my mother. Sarah took up for her, and I guess Andrea kind of felt like she was being teamed up on.
Right.
So Andrea decided to go upstairs and take a breather. So I guess they finished dinner without her, and she was upstairs in her room. Well, in our family, it's normal for people, no matter how big of an argument we had, like an hour later, it's like everything's fine. We said our piece. Who cares? Because especially when the argument is out of love, it's like we don't hate each other. We just didn't agree. So anyways, I guess after she cooled off in her room, she came back down and she said, I really would like to go to the doctor tonight. And so she had Ethan take her to McDonald's to get some food. I guess she didn't want the Chinese. And the plan was for Ethan to drop her off at the emergency room, and then my mom had a gift card for her to use to take an Uber back home.
Okay.
So that nobody had to wait up at the hospital with her for hours.
Right.
So that was the plan. And Andrea took the Uber back to my mom's house. Couldn't get in, and then she walked.
About what time would you say that was, approximately?
If I had to guess, I would say around 11:30 to midnight, possibly.
All right, so 11:30 of August 12th.
Yeah, so she stayed at from my perspective, I didn't talk to any of them like I did not come into the story until Andrea walked up to my house because I was kind of taking a break from technology. It was a terrible coincidence that day that I was not paying attention to my phone. My kids were asleep in the living room. I had my phone sitting in the kitchen, and I was sitting outside talking to my best friend, Michelle. So I was sitting on the porch, and she was standing up smoking a cigarette, and Andrea comes walking up, and it was kind of like the feeling you get when you're doing the best you can. You know, like if you're upset, but you kind of have to hold it together. You don't just go around crying in public. So she saw me, and she kind of broke down and kind of let it all out. You know, it's like she felt comfortable to say what was happening. And
what time was that? What time was that, Aaron, when she showed up at your place?
Probably just after 11:30, if I had to guess.
Okay. So why do you think? Why didn't you? I know this is a very technical question. Why? So she took the Uber though back to your mother's house.
Yeah.
Okay, but she couldn't get in or something, or didn't feel like seeing them again, or what do you think it was?
She couldn't get in the house.
Okay.
Sorry, one second.
Was it because they were asleep, or was nobody there? Do you even know? Jump right in.
No, it's highly likely that they were awake and did not let them in. There has been some confusion with the interviews that were conducted by the police, and maybe some mixed stories. So you have to put it in the category of uncertain, but we think they absolutely had to be awake. If she was knocking on the door, that she would have been heard. That's for sure.
I know that, of course, Sarah is your daughter. What has she told you? If we could just keep it as simple as that. What does she remember? Does she say, you know what, if she came back, we didn't hear, or if you can say?
That's correct. She just said that she didn't hear, and that was the story we got. So Andrea proceeded to leave and walk back to Aaron's house, and I believe she spent some time there. And because Aaron was with her friend Michelle still, and they were just chatting, having a glass of wine or something like that, and then I believe after a while, Aaron decided to take Andrea back to Cheryl's house. And she dropped her off there. I don't think she even stayed there at all. I think she came right back and walked back to Aaron's house. And when she got back to Aaron's house, it was approximately 1:30 a.m. And so there were 2 trips Andrea made back to the house. And the last one, she left Aaron's house at 1:38, and the reason I know that is because I got the phone call that fathers don't want to get at 1:38 in the morning. Aaron was on the phone calling me. Andrea was at her back door. I could hear Andrea that she was upset, and Aaron was asking me what to do. And so Aaron's kids were sleeping in her lower level too, because there was painting going on at her place. And so she really didn't have room. Andrea was kind of rambunctious still. She didn't want a lot of commotion or drama over there. She just moved into the place. And I recommended to Aaron to send her back home, but call your mother and make sure that she instructs Sarah and Ethan to let her in the house. Now, keep in mind, this is not a long walk. It's 7 or 8 blocks. You could probably walk it in 12 minutes. It is a community that has a country club and a golf course 2 blocks away from the house. So it is a city within the city of Louisville called Audubon Park, and it has its own police force. It's known as being very safe. And so Andrea walked back there. She made it back there too. So I think any guilt that Aaron would have that something might have happened to her after leaving the house at 1:30 should be just dropped and forgot about. She made it back to the house. And we know that from the pings on her phone that tracked her there. And she made it back to the house at approximately just before 2 o'clock.
All right, Mike, let me jump in here for a second, because obviously this is something that I've not heard before, that maybe is not clear in all of the reporting that has been done in Andrea's disappearance. So actually, technically, Andrea made 2 trips from her mother's house to Aaron's, and Aaron's getting back here in the conversation. So after the Uber, Andrea gets dropped off at her mother's house, can't get in for whatever reason. She goes over to your house, Aaron. Then you drive her actually back to your mother's house, but then Andrea walks back to your place again. Correct?
Yes.
Wow. If you can say, what was the context of the conversations, or maybe it rose to arguments, discussions that you were having with Andrea that night?
Yeah, she was just really sad. It was not, I wasn't upset. I wasn't mad at her. She wasn't really mad at me. She was asking me if she could stay. And this is something that today it's hard for me to talk about. It's traumatizing.
I'm sure.
I didn't use my back door for a year after this, just because I couldn't every time I opened the door, I thought about her crying. So when we say she was being loud, she was really just, it wasn't like angry loud. She was just emotional and sad. And
what were her words? What was she talking about in when she was being sad? What was she talking about?
She was asking me if she could stay in my house with me. She was begging me to, and I feel terrible for telling her no.
Yeah.
Like, if I could change one thing in my whole life, that's what I would change.
Of course. Is it because...
Blame it on me, Aaron. Blame it on me. I asked you to do it. Blame it on me.
Is this an issue that she wanted to stay with you because she thought she was being rejected by Ethan and Sarah and her mother at the other house? Or was this something deeper, just about what was going on in her life, the way you look at it now?
I feel like she was just upset. She had just had a bad day, and she was upset. It literally seemed like any other day. Andrea is very, she's very, when she's happy, everybody in the room's happy. She can make other people feel her feelings, and just by how she's very expressive and loud, she's just naturally that person. So the same thing is true for when she's sad. She's very expressive, and she can be very loud sometimes. So even though to other people, they don't really understand this situation, because they don't understand Andrea. Like, the way she was acting that night, in my opinion, was just that's how she is when she's sad,
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like she would go overboard with it, where she would be too sensitive, where I would say, Andrea, like, it's really not that bad, just go home and sleep it off, and tomorrow you're not even going to care. Because, like, that was so normal for our family and for Andrea at the time, for her to feel like whatever's happening right then is catastrophic, but then 20 minutes later she doesn't care anymore. Like,
would you say that, I'm no psychologist or anything, but would you maybe compare this to kind of like a nervous breakdown, something like that?
I think that was I honestly think that was just normal for her. That's
okay.
That's how she acts when she's sad.
Okay. All right.
Where she can be.
How did maybe I should ask you this? Being that the first time you drove her back over there, would you say that she went with you willingly or reluctantly?
Willingly. The first time, she was okay. It was no big deal. And I fully thought that she would get in, go to sleep, and everything would be fine the next day. I mean, we had plans of taking our kids to the park the next couple of days, since her car was not working. We had talked about getting together with the kids, and so we were already making plans for the following days that night.
Okay. All right. So then your understanding is you dropped her off, and once again, she couldn't get into the house.
Yeah, and I was hoping that she would just knock and get in, because, I mean, it was the house that we grew up in, so we know what it's like. You ring the doorbell, you knock on the door, it wakes up everybody in the house, and someone comes in. I mean, or someone comes down and lets you in. So I fully thought that she'd knock on the door and get in the house, and everything would be fine. So, but the story is, once again, none of us were there, and I realize this, Mike, this is your other daughter, and Aaron, this is your other sister, but they claim both times that they never heard Andrea knock, ring the bell, nothing. Right.
Okay. All right,
There's some confusion on that, and
Okay.
It's not that clear cut. There is some thought out there that stories were changed. I have no proof of that. It's just in conversations with authorities, and so we're not quite sure.
Okay. I guess, once again, I just have to ask this because this is my job, but Sarah is your daughter, but she has told you one-on-one is your father. If you can say, I realize this is a private conversation between daughter and father, but she claims that nope, she never heard, never heard Andrea either time.
That's correct.
Okay.
And after Andrea went missing, I took Sarah to dinner and just to talk to her about this, and then told her what was about to happen with all the interviews and the investigation, and told her to come forth with everything she has and all that, and that's exactly what she told me.
Yeah,
yes.
we should understand something. I have two brothers and a sister. All right, they're quite a bit older than me, but I'm still very close to them. And the listeners know I have my brother Brian, who lives no more than 20 minutes from me in Florida. And let's just admit, we don't always get along all the time. And sometimes, we just have to take a break from each other, and personalities clash and things like that. So, we're not trying to put anything nefarious on Sarah or anybody else. It's just that when you say, the story is still unclear, all I'm asking is, you've had a one-on-one conversation with Sarah, and she simply said that, nope, she didn't hear Andrea at all. That's all.
That's correct.
Okay, that's good enough for me. Okay. All right, so then, of course, she comes back. This is this one, so we're now into August 13th, and 1:38 a.m., this is Aaron, then you call Mike, and Mike, you hear Andrea in the background, and these things are going on. And then Andrea finally decides, or is asked, to walk back to the other house. And we know that she went back over there because eventually, when these pings were discovered, that she did go back to the other house, and that's where the phone pinged.
That's correct. She definitely made it back here where her phone did for sure. So I'm sure she did too.
Yeah, the phone shows the exact walking path that she took to get to Mom's house, and it included this walking bridge that connects two streets that people that are local to this area know about, but someone that some random stranger wouldn't know that there's this walking bridge between the buildings that takes you to Audubon Park. So I feel strongly that it was Andrea that did that, because it's the way she would have went. Okay.
And we should also be clear about one more thing. As far as we know then, there's of course a lot of theories, though, and we don't do theories on the interviews. As the listeners know, we don't really get into conjecture as to what happened to the missing person. But to your knowledge, even to this day, on January 23rd, 2022, there's no proof that anybody actually saw Andrea after, Aaron, you saw her at your back door of your place.
That's right. After she left my house, we go off of the cell phone.
Yeah.
It's called Google Dashboard is exactly what it's called. So her Android phone was logged into Gmail, and then her laptop was also logged into Gmail. So that's how we were able to track the movements of her phone. And there's been some new developments with it recently.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to this. So you see her last time, and we'll get back to those pings and the exact times and everything in a little bit. But when does somebody actually realize that Andrea is missing? How does that happen?
So the next day, I just got up and went to work like a normal day. And I would say this is an estimate. Around 10 o'clock, my mom sent a text, and a group text. It was Mom, Sarah, Andrea, and I. She said, "Has anyone talked to Andrea? I haven't talked to her today." And since I obviously was calling Mom late at night, the night before, saying, "Make sure Andrea gets in okay," that's not normal for us to be having those conversations late at night. So it would make sense for Mom to want to, check on Andrea in the morning to make sure everything's fine. So I guess she was not able to get a hold of Andrea, so she was kind of just checking around. Have you all talked to her?
Yeah.
I said no. Sarah said no. So my thinking at that point, while I was working, was that, Andrea was up late last night. She never gets up early. So I thought she's probably still sleeping. And I went on about my work day, expecting to, hear from mom later on, or, I thought everything was still normal. So then my mom continued to try to get a hold of Andrea. So I would say it was probably about 3:30 or 4 that mom sent another message, and she said, "Has anyone talked to Andrea?" And Sarah and I both said no again. Well, that's when that's the very first time I felt like something was not normal, because 3:30 or 4, Andrea's usually awake by then, and it would be normal. It was normal for her, just because, it can be hard being an adult living with your mother. That's not an easy situation for anyone. Yeah. So it was normal for Andrea to go be with her friend, and it was usually that best friend, the one that they used to live together. Okay. It was normal for her to go and take a breather for a day or two, and then come back and go back to working on fixing her situation. So anyways,
if I can ask, if I just jump in here for 1 second, being that this was like a group message to multiple people at one time, including yourself and Sarah, when Sarah said, "Nope, I haven't seen her today," did you ever ask Sarah, well, she walked back over to your house last night, did you not let her in? Did you ever ask Sarah at that time?
No, I didn't at that point.
Okay. All right.
I thought when Andrea left my house, I didn't say this, but when she left my house, the last time I saw her was not at my back door. I went to the front of my house and looked out my kitchen window because I wanted to see how she was, because I felt bad for turning her away, Yeah. So I went to see what she was doing and how she was as she walked away from my house. So I saw her looking at her phone, and walking, and it looked to me like she was scrolling through. So the reason I didn't say something to Sarah was because I assumed that she had her friend pick her up.
Okay, so
that's what made sense in my head.
And this is before you knew about the pings and everything else. So, all right, so in your mind, getting into the afternoon of that day after Andrea went missing, you're just thinking, well, no use to say anything to Sarah, because I really don't believe Andrea went back to where Sarah and Ethan were anyway.
Yes, from the very beginning, I've always thought that one of her friends picked her up.
Okay, we're not getting into theories, but that is the reason what you were thinking at the time. That's why you didn't bring it up with Sarah.
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, so what happens next when everybody starts saying, "Oh, well, this is not good"? What do all of you do?
So late afternoon, when Mom asked us again, that's when it was not normal, because Andrea, normally when she went to her friend's house, she would stop by Mom's house and pick up clothes, pick up her face wash or makeup. She didn't leave the house without all her skincare products, especially with her problems she had going on. So that's when I really started to worry. So I started checking around with her friends, and I think we didn't go. I would call Mom and report back to her and tell her who said what, and I would call aunts and uncles, all of our family, all of her friends that I knew of that she was close with.
Yeah.
And they were all saying no. And the friend that she was roommates with, that was her best friend, that's the one that did not answer. And I felt in my heart that that's where she was. I thought, this is not like Andrea. She doesn't hold grudges, but maybe she's upset with us all for turning her away, because that's not something that any of us would normally do. So maybe she was extra hurt by this. Even though she's not the type of person to hold a grudge, no one fathoms that in their mind, that their family member's gone.
Of course not.
You just don't think that. So I thought, this is not like Andrea, but hopefully she's with Amber. And I remember later on that day thinking, I'm going to be the bigger person. If she's upset with me, I'm going to send her a message and tell her I'm sorry. Hopefully that breaks the ice and she'll talk to one of us so that we know everything's okay. So I told her, I'm sorry, Andrea. I want to help you, but I don't know. You have to help yourself too. I love it, but I love you no matter what. And I'm here for you. I'm sorry for not letting you in that night. And she never answered me. That was really, really unlike her. I would have been happy with a go to hell or it's okay. Anything.
Yes.
Anything. Absolutely anything would have been fine with me, just so that I knew she was okay. but she didn't answer at all, and that's not who Andrea is. She always answers. So,
Mike, if I can jump in, Mike, how did you find out about all this that day?
Well, Erin and I kept the dialogue, and she when she was checking around with people, she would call me and keep me filled in with what's going on. And so mine was just specifically my conversation with Erin and our worry about it. And it obviously went to day 1 to day 2, and then we got very worried, and we start checking around more. And then I guess the Friday morning is when we talked. Erin and I talked last, and I said, we can't wait any longer. You got to file the police report. Even though she does run off and stay with a friend or two for a couple of days every now and then, we can't wait any longer.
And that's maybe a good question I need to ask you. Just maybe in the months, I realize, we're unfortunately we're going to be coming up on, it's like 2.5 years now. But thinking back to earlier in 2019, how long, the way you remember it, how long was the longest time that maybe Andrea would be out of touch with both of you and her mother and her other sister? With maybe her friends were seeing her, but how long was the longest she ever kept out of touch with her family?
Minutes or hours. She would never go a full day without talking to any of us. So that's why I was really worried when it became late afternoon and no one had seen her.
Okay. All right. Let me ask you one more thing. Being that you were calling all these friends, and this one particular friend that you thought probably was the best choice, where Andrea might have gone, whether she got another Uber to go there or Amber picked her up or something in between. Did you wait until you spoke to Amber before you got the police involved? Or how long did it take to get, Amber's attention?
It took her a couple days. Let's see. So it was the 13th when I began calling around, 14, 15. It was 4 days before she finally got back to me. And that's when all hell broke loose, and I knew something was seriously wrong. She told me it had been over a week since she talked to Andrea, or I think even 2 weeks. It had been a lot longer than any of us had realized. Mm-hmm. And that's when I called Dad, and I was like, Dad, something is really wrong, and we need to call the police. Like I said, I'm scared, though, because, like I said, no one thinks that their family is going to go missing. I said, Dad, not only did I tell her she couldn't stay with me, but now I'm going to be basically calling the police on her. I was like, I'm scared. I don't want her to be even madder at me than she already is. Mm-hmm. But if she needs help, we need to help her right now. So basically those are my thoughts. And I said, Dad, what do you think? And he said, I agree. Aaron, you need to make the police report. So that's what I did.
Okay. Did Amber ever give you any reason why it took so long to reach her, why she didn't get back to you immediately, especially since you were leaving messages with her saying, hey, Andrea's missing. Is she there? Please call me back. Did she ever offer any explanation for that? She's
really, when her and Andrea were living together, she was a lot more responsive and kept up with me better. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, when they stopped living together, she was always harder to get a hold of after that. And to this day, she's still really hard for me to get a hold of. So I thought, I didn't ask her why. And I just...
She didn't give you any explanation either. She wasn't like, you know what, I apologize. I was out of town. I apologize. I had something going on. I apologize. My phone wasn't working. Nothing like that.
No, she always is like that. And it's frustrating, but I just have to deal with it if I want to communicate with her. Okay.
So you finally do talk to her, but she says she hadn't spoken to Andrea maybe since August 7th or something. Like a while.
Yeah. Or before that even, yeah.
Before that even. Okay. All right. So here's this person that you thought, both you and Mike thought that she was, communicating with, you maybe even seeing, and then this woman tells you, no, I have not seen her at all. Okay. What about the father of both of Andrea's children? I understand, and the listeners should know they are not suspected in her disappearance, anything like that, but in reaching them, did they have any insight at all?
I spoke with her older child's father, and he said that he was trying to get a hold of her for, for their child, and he was worried. And the younger son's dad said he didn't know, he hadn't talked to her.
Okay. Do they live in the immediate area of driving distance, I guess?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you said it was a Friday. You're going to have to maybe. What date do you think it was that you finally got the police involved?
It was the 17th, August 17th.
August 17th. And what did they do? How many people did they talk to? Did they go, for example, did they go speak to Amber? Did they, of course, I'm guessing they interviewed Ethan and Sarah. Who did they talk to? And in addition, any searches done along the route? You know, if they thought she was walking back to your mother's house. What all went on with the police in those first few days?
Well, I can tell you, when I did the police report, it was just a regular patrol officer that came and took down all the information and handed me a case number and left. So
yeah,
that was scary because I was like, is that it? You know, like you don't know what's going to happen. And I felt like they were kind of slower than I expected. I mean, no one thinks that. You don't really think about how they're going to respond. It just was not as fast as I was thinking they would. I thought that they'd jump right on it immediately, and that was not the case.
No,
so there's no evidence of a crime there. That's the reason.
That's true.
Adults can go missing, and it's very legal for them to be missing, and just their prerogative. So there was no evidence of a crime yet, and that's why they took their time. And obviously the understaffing issues and other issues are a side note on that.
Yeah. Okay. So they show up. They take this report. And I'm going to be doing a YouTube video just so everybody understands the locations of where both of these houses are. Aaron, where maybe you live there today, none of my business, but were you at least living in 2019 in the other house? But for example, there's a golf course right there. Was it searched? Anything like that? Anybody do any going door to door in the area, knocking on all the doors between Aaron, your place and your mother's house, anything like that?
Yeah, we did search. We knocked on doors, and we didn't get everyone to answer, but we talked to everyone that would answer. We looked to see if they had cameras at all, and if they did, we wrote down their addresses and gave them to Tracy for him to go back and see if he could search their footage.
Tracy's the private investigator.
Okay.
And Mark Baker was the other one. We had a canine search volunteer group search the woods behind my house. There's a strip of woods, and then there's a golf course. I don't know if that's something you can see on the map or not.
Okay.
But yeah, so they searched the field. There's a big field and the woods. Found nothing. Since then, we've searched any area that we get sightings, possible sightings in. We searched day and night, staked out areas. We fully expected to find her.
Yeah.
We thought it's possible she could have had a mental breakdown or maybe drugs.
Sure.
Like that's what the early thought was, maybe that she chose to leave, and that's what we were hoping because we wanted her to be okay. So for a long time, we were looking for her alive and okay, and it was a very urgent matter for us that we worked hard on. I was getting babysitters, and as much as I could, I was there helping with the investigation.
And the listeners should understand, this is a city area. You've already explained it. Maybe it has its own private police force, but it's a neighborhood. Yes, the golf course is there, but really, for the most part, it's just a neighborhood. Houses kind of close to each other. It's regular city streets, stoplights, crosswalks, all those things, correct?
Right, and the golf course is, landscaped, obviously, and people go golfing there regularly, so I don't think it wouldn't really make sense for her to be there without anybody seeing,
Right, of course, once again, 2.5 years later, if maybe she ended up, unfortunately, there, you would have thought with all the keeping they do of golf courses, somebody would have run across her remains, for example.
That's possible, yeah. And there is Beargrass Creek that runs through Louisville, and I think there's a pond that's on the golf course. So I mean, I feel like there's bodies of water that still need to be searched.
Okay.
All
right. Let's move on to this now. So the police show up. As Mike, you've already stated, as I've told the listeners many times over the last 5+ years, it's very difficult when adults go missing and there's not any clear sign that there was foul play, that a lot of times the police just shrug their shoulders and say, I don't know what you want us to do. We'll keep an eye out for her and everything, but they'll do what they can. But if there's no really signs of foul play, a lot of times they're stumped. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm trying to change that, but that is certainly the current situation. Let's move on to this now. We've already talked about these cell phone, I'm calling them pings, but as you explained, you got this information through Google dashboard. When was that first done? Who did that? And what did that information say?
Tracy Leonard was the first person to do that. I asked Mom for Andrea's laptop and I handed it over to Tracy and he checked the Google timeline. And then after that, I'd say a week after Andrea went missing, he gave it to the police.
Okay. And what do those pings show? As we've already kind of alluded to it, they did show that after she was at your house at 1:38 in the morning, the pings did go back to your mother's house.
Yes.
Okay. And how long were those pings in that area according to Google?
At the time, what we saw in that timeline was that she was there for hours. And that her phone, I think it was possibly 3:30 in the morning, that it turned off and then it came back on briefly at 6:31 in the morning. And when it came on at 6:31 in the morning, it was probably a split second. It was as if someone turned it on after it had already died and then it went right back off. That's what it sounded like to me.
Yeah.
And it was not able to calculate the location at that point. But
okay, so maybe to be a little more accurate with this then. So what you're saying is around 3:30 something, it did ping around your mother's house, but then it went off. But when it came back on, it did not necessarily say where it was.
Yes, that's what at the time that's what we was seen and thought.
It was just a flicker, so it wasn't long enough to calculate that it was there or the location had changed. We don't know.
Okay.
Edward, we've got some newer news too, and we can't go into a whole lot of depth. But there's been a breakthrough on the timeline that is not widely public yet. So it's evolving. They found more information that leads away from the home, and that's about all we can say.
Okay.
And it's ongoing. It's being investigated, but it's more indicative of something moving away from the house. Okay. Aaron, do you want to have anything to add to that without saying too much?
And the investigators have gotten statements that go along with that possibility. So we have someone else backing it up now.
Okay. If I can ask, I realize it sounds to me you only want to say so much about this. Is this information then that was gathered through electronic means like Google, or is this something more human-based? Both. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what you're saying is there may be electronic information after, it doesn't sound to me, once again, in my experience, that the 6:30 something ping has given you much, but you're saying that there might be something else that did after the 3:30 ping at your mother's house.
Yeah.
It's indicative that she left the house and maybe spent some time elsewhere for 2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, she wasn't. It showed that she wasn't actually at Mom's for all those hours. That she was just there briefly and went somewhere else.
Okay.
Or the phone wasn't there.
And that's certainly something we have to remember. Just because a phone pings somewhere does not mean the person is there. We learned that too many times in too many disappearances. All right, that's certainly true. Okay. And that's, is this information, once again, we're doing this interview on January 23rd, 2022. Is this information that just popped up since the beginning of the year, let's say?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the last couple, 2-3 weeks.
Okay. Very good. All right. And I realize you can't talk about it this time. So we have to be open to the idea that Andrea was somewhere else that early morning, or getting into when the sun is coming up of August 13th, that just isn't known to the public. You know what it is, but you're going to keep it under wraps for now. Okay. So listeners, you're just going to have to be happy with that for now. All right, let's move on to this. What about the actual cell phone records? Not the pings, but the actual people or text messages, of course, Facebook Messenger, etc. Do you know any information that you can talk about that?
Aaron, you want to go?
Well, I know that she was looking through her phone to get someone to pick her up, and I've talked to a couple of her friends who told me that she was reaching them asking for a ride. So, I say asking for a ride, but she wasn't wanting a ride. She was wanting to hang out and spend time with her friends, is what I meant.
At 2 o'clock, at 2 in the morning?
Yes.
Okay.
And Suzette, I think, was already asleep, or like halfway asleep, and I think Suzette missed her call.
Aaron, tell them who Suzette is. They may not know who Suzette is.
You're going to have to probably say who Suzette is, please.
Yeah, so Suzette is Andrea's friend of many years. They also volunteered with Missing in America together. They're the ones that, she's the one who Andrea started with Missing in America with. So Suzette was one of the people who has told me that Andrea called her, and she said she missed the call and then called her right back. Like she might have been about to sleep or something, and Andrea didn't answer when she called back. And then another person was a family member of her her son's dad's family member. She was actually friends with her also. She had asked her to come pick her up, and I guess she was not the type of person to be driving out at nighttime, let alone late at night. So she didn't do it, and they feel terrible about it, obviously.
Right. But you don't. But we should be clear. You don't actually have her phone record. In fact, this is something we've talked about before this interview today.
Yes.
But you don't actually have the Andrea's actual phone records for that night and morning.
Right. Police have told me, like when I've talked to the police about this, I'll say, you have her phone records, you have her laptop, which you told me is logged into all her social media. I thought that when I handed that laptop over to the police, they'd find her within a matter of days, because I know for a fact that Andrea, her main way of communication was through Facebook Messenger. So it didn't make any sense to me at all that they weren't able to immediately find her. That to this day still blows my mind.
And what do they say about that? I'm guessing you've probably said that to them. What do they say to that?
Yeah. He said he looked through it all and didn't find anything helpful. I don't buy it. It makes no sense to me.
Okay. But regarding the phone records, whether she had Sprint or T-Mobile, which is what I have, AT&T or whatever, you don't have those actual phone records like we would get, for example, in a bill. You don't have those records.
Right. I think it's possible that maybe the phone number, people that do things that they don't want other people to know about, obviously, will sometimes have burner phones. And I wonder if maybe the police have numbers on there. They couldn't figure out who it belonged to. And so they just said, well, this is not giving us information. Let's move on to something else. Like basically. Okay,
well we should be clear though. There's no proof of that.
Right, there isn't.
That's just an idea.
Yeah, that's a possibility that I think about.
All right, but have you tried to get her actual phone records? Are you going to try to do that?
No, we've tried through the police, and they won't give it up.
Okay. All right, so we have a situation where you have these pings. It sounds like there's some new information that we can't reveal in this interview today, but so we have that. And as far as, maybe I should ask you this, how did you, being that you don't have any phone records, how did you even did these people, the Suzette and this other woman, did they just voluntarily contact you and say, oh, Andrea called me that morning or text me or whatever?
Suzette told me right away when I was looking for Andrea about the last time that she, had any type of interaction with Andrea, and that's what she told me. And then the second person just told me this very recently, like couple weeks ago.
Wow. Any reason that she waited that long? Do you know?
She told me that she was mad at us, and she thought that she said she thought we weren't being very helpful to Andrea, but from my perspective, that doesn't make any sense.
Okay. Once again, being that this was a family member of one of Andrea's exes, Mike or Aaron, does it surprise you that Andrea reached out to her in a time of need?
You know what? I can't really answer that, but it really didn't matter to us. We were going to check everybody.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, that same family member is the first person I visited, probably right after we pretty much knew Andrea was missing, the Friday or Saturday. I went to the young lady's house and knocked on the door.
Okay. That's very
so
good.
we got on it right away and started doing the groundwork ourselves, because we knew the police weren't going to be real busy right away. They probably didn't believe she was missing, and it certainly wasn't an urgency to them. They may have had, 5 other 5-year-olds missing for all we know.
Okay. Let's move on to this. Of course, we've talked about the fathers of Andrea's children. Once again, my understanding is that neither of them are considered suspects in any of this. There's no proof that she contacted any of them. Maybe that one family member, but not them specifically. And Andrea's sons were with each of those men at the time of this disappearance. But what about any new men in her life? Do you know if the police looked into these people? Did you look into any of them? Because as you would suspect, a lot of times when women go missing and there is foul play, it is done by a guy in they have a relationship with or something like that. Have any of these newer men or man said about her disappearance, if there is one?
Okay, yeah, we, at the time of leading up to Andrea going missing, the people that she was, any man that was in her life that she was seeing at the time, she wasn't telling me about it. Okay. But people would pick her up sometimes, and she wouldn't say who they were, or sometimes they would go by nicknames. We ended up finding out who one of those people was through her roommate and best friend Amber, and we knocked on his. Well, Dad, I think you actually did.
Yes.
It wasn't me, but he would not give us any information, or he didn't have any. Dad, what was that?
Well, I just must say, the 30,000-foot picture is that there are a lot of people, a lot of acquaintances, and a lot of problems with a whole lot of these people. Had records and bad behavior, jail time, drug involvement. But yes, I, along with Mark Baker, one of the private investigators who is deceased now, he left us about a year ago as a young man. We knocked on his door, and he never made it to the door. We only spoke to his girlfriend. Wow. But that's just something that didn't work out. It's one of the many things, maybe 100 things that fell through. But the problem with this case is that your listeners find fascinating is, it was stated before in some of the other cases, there may be 100 people of interest, 100 different people that you'd have to look at. Yeah. And it's just a deep bench of people to consider, and there's not just one person that might have had a record or had some drug activity or something, and there were multiple ones. And I think all those bad characters and the fact that she was living a high-risk lifestyle has made this case just extraordinarily difficult, and it was mentioned as such by one of the other private investigators that although he worked 30 years in homicide in another city, he thinks this is one of the most complicated cases he's ever seen.
Okay. What about Ethan and Sarah? What have they had to say about this? And maybe we just need to ask this, being that Andrea was living at this house. Did she not have a key to get into this house over there? Was there not, like a key that was hidden outside that she could have gotten in on her own? Even if Ethan and Sarah, if they say they were sleeping, I'm willing to believe that. could she not get into the house on her own? What have they had to say about any of that?
So the way I found out about the key situation and her not having one is it was 2 weeks. It was about 2 weeks before Andrea went missing. I was planning on meeting one of my friends at the park with our children, and she called me and was wanting to hang out. I told her what we were doing, and she was like, "Sure, I'll go with you." So we spent time together with our kids at the park, and then when I went to bring Andrea home, Sarah and Ethan were not there. So she said, "I can't get into the house until they get home." So we sat in the driveway, and I waited with her while she called Sarah. They said they were at the hardware store and they were on their way back to let her in. So they came back, let her in, and that was it. And I talked to my mom and Sarah, and I was like, why doesn't she have a key? That's weird. That, like if you say she can live there, why does she not have a key? And my mom said that she's tired. Like our whole life, after we grew up and moved out of our mother's house, we've all three had keys. And she was tired of everybody being able to get into her house, is what she said. And and I guess with Sarah and Ethan doing all the renovations, another factor was that all those expensive tools were there. And I guess they were worried about that. With Andrea having a high-risk lifestyle,
yeah.
I think it was related to that.
Wow.
You want to help someone that you love, but you also don't want to hurt yourself in the process. So I think that was their way of being able to control what was happening in the home.
Okay. Regarding Ethan and Sarah, were they when maybe when these pings, of course, came to light and it showed that the phone pinged, in close proximity to the house where they were staying, how shocked were they by all that?
What do you mean? Like,
well, obviously, if they were asleep, they did not know that you, of course, drove her over to there, and then she came back to your place again, and then, of course, the ping showed that she went back over to there. Were they surprised when they saw these pings and said, "Oh, she was right outside our door for a couple hours and we didn't know it"?
No, I was not like there with them when they figured that out, or when they were told that.
Yeah.
I talked to them after they already realized it, so I'm not really sure.
Okay.
I just said, did you hear from her that night? And and Sarah said no.
Okay.
That's all I really got.
Yes, your viewers may also want to, your listeners may also want to know that this was mid-August. It was probably 90 degrees or mid-80s, maybe low 80s. She might have just crashed in her car that was sitting in the driveway, broken down. So that's one of the theories, that she may have spent the night there.
Okay.
For a couple hours anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
And the reason that we thought that is because when Andrea first moved into Mom's house, that there were times where they would argue, and Andrea would, as a way to be stubborn, she would go outside and sleep in her car sometimes. She did it maybe once or twice because of an argument. She chose to do that. So that's why we thought it's possible that night she did that, because she couldn't get in the house.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Let's move on to this, and I'm bringing it up because we know that just not too many hours before she went missing, she used this service. But has anybody checked Uber to make sure that, being that she just used Uber, that she did not use Uber again to get out of the area?
Yes. The police checked with this person that was driving the Uber. Matter of fact, I sat on his residence too for a while. Obviously, he was a suspect. He knew what was going on. If you know Andrea, she probably told him everything that was going on in her life, and that she was in a situation where she was vulnerable. Yeah. And who knows? We don't know who this guy was. He could have been somebody that watches out for people like this, for a group that would traffic, for all we know. So he was interviewed by the private investigators. The police were made aware of it, and everything we've got from that said that he was not involved.
Okay, so Uber's been checked. No proof that she used Uber, or I guess we could include Lyft in this, any ride service like that morning, or even just good old-fashioned taxi. No proof of any of that.
That's right. If it was off. It was off the grid and off the record.
Okay, very good. Now, we can't forget that Andrea did have some, quite a bit, I guess what has been explained, about 5 years of missing persons experience, following disappearances, working in that, volunteering, and I can tell you that from the work that I've done for the last 5+ years, probably if I wanted to go off the grid, or however you want to put it, for an extended period of time, I could probably do it because I've covered so many disappearances. Do you think that that could be a factor in Andrea's disappearance, being that she also got involved in disappearances, that she would have known, you know what, I know what I need to do if I wanted to go off the grid for a while? Is that entered your mind? Do you think that she had enough understanding like that to, being that her phone did go off seemingly around the time that she went missing, any insight into any of that at all?
Edward, everything has entered our mind, including that. And we've understood that people, when they do that, they usually have to have things set up somehow in advance. We didn't think that was even possible. We know for a fact she even had interviews lined up, I believe, shortly after she went missing. So she was planning on rebounding, the way it looked to us. So, but we know of ways that it could be done, or somebody could have taken her and somewhere else, way out of town. We think that's still the most likely thing that happened. But there's different groups. I think there's one in Eastern Kentucky on the Tennessee border, a group of people that live completely off the grid together. Yeah. Who's to say she's not there? Who's to say she's not in Mexico? She could be anywhere at this point. Anywhere at all.
That would be a dream come true if she was okay and just chose to do this. But
we'd be very happy about that.
Of course.
We'd be very happy to see her alive.
If I can just go back maybe to the phone information for a little bit. Is it your understanding then, do you think, if anybody's been able to tell you this, is it a belief that she shut her phone off, or that the battery went dead? Do we know what kind of charging situation she had on her battery at the time of her disappearance? Any insight into that?
And that should be you.
Okay, well, she did not mention her phone being close to being dead that night. I know that if she had a charger, she definitely did not have a charger with her. She only had a flat wallet that she was putting in her back pocket, and then she had her phone. There was no cord or anything. But she did have access to her car, and also my mom's garage has an outlet that Andrea knows is there, since our childhood, that she could have used to charge her phone. So I'm not sure if she did or not, but it was possible that she could have because of the garage.
Okay. So is it possible she could have been charging her phone, let's just say, from that 1:38 when she walked back over to your mother's house until 3:30 or whenever the phone seemingly went off, and then it came back on for a second, maybe?
She could have also used her car charger, I guess, if it was get a charger with her.
Okay. All right. So we're still not sure if the phone died or somebody or she shut it off. But like you said, it sounds to me like you've gotten some new information 2.5 years into this. Being that it's phone information or technical information is certainly interesting to me. Okay. The last 2+ years, as you've mentioned more than once, and as many guests have said on this program, never expect that this is going to happen to them. How has your family, dealt with this?
I think about it all the time. I worry. I'm much more careful. I was already a careful person before this, but now I'm a lot more careful. I think about it in everyday situations that, with my kids, with anyone that I love. I think about how easy how tragedy can be right around the corner if you're not careful. Just because of how normal this situation seemed, it completely changed my perspective, and it changed the entire course of my life.
And it can be there if you're careful too, Aaron.
Yeah.
It can hit anybody anytime. It really can. But the family dynamics have really, any cracks that were there, I think, have widened. Any good relationships were strengthened. So to be perfectly honest, Aaron and my relationship have really strengthened. We are truly a team in every sense in this search for Andrea. And my relationship with my youngest daughter, Sarah, is not so good right now. She's just very upset over this whole thing. She's mad at me. She doesn't think I did enough to help Andrea. She doesn't even know what I've done, but she doesn't think I did enough. And she's very angry at me. And I think Aaron could probably comment on her mother. Aaron?
Yeah, my mom has never really. So, and he's right about the cracks that were already there have been widened. And,
Okay.
And then there's some animosity. I feel that the approach to how to try to find Andrea, I think, have created these things too. Aaron and I have been extraordinarily active.
Yeah.
And I've said it before. We decided not to cocoon ourselves and start drinking lots of alcohol or whatever. We decided to convert our depression into activity, and we are very, very human and very fragile. We understand it, and we still have very terrible down days still, but we pick each other up and we keep looking, and we've been very aggressive, and it's hard to believe it's been almost 2.5 years, but the energy's still there, and we do things every day. Every single day.
And it sounds to me like, as you stated, you have some new information just within the last few weeks that I guess it sounds to me like, although you can't totally talk about it, it sounds like it's going in a positive direction, like it's going to reveal, some more, make some more revelations here.
It's maybe progressing a little bit, but I'm always skeptical about that. I need to also say that as part of the dynamics, some people may have this thing may be beating them down. Others have grown in this horrible family tragedy, and the person that has grown is Erin. She was truly a middle sister, maybe had a little bit of that syndrome. She has grown and strengthened. She's a fighter. She is relentless, tremendous energy, and I am amazed at the energy and the strength that she has shown and how she's grown in this. And this is a big part of this story, and I want to thank her for doing this to help find your sister, my daughter, and I'll never ever underestimate you in anything, and I'm just amazed by your strength.
Thank you, Dad.
You're welcome.
Do you have a Facebook page, website, Twitter feed, anything you want to talk about as to the places that people can go to find out, if you're posting anywhere, writing about what's going on? Please talk about those sites right now.
Yes. So the way Dad and I are a team, along with the private investigators, is we divide up tasks so that we can be the most effective. And with me being a single mother and needing to be at home and for my children, I handle the raising awareness aspect of it and social media. So the main place that I raise awareness and give updates and give out volunteer opportunities is on Facebook. There is Where is Andrea Knabel, which is a Facebook page. Also, I have one called Finding Andrea. And the third one is a group on Facebook that is called Andrea Knabel Missing in Louisville, Kentucky Case Discussion. That one used to be a gossip group, but I started using it to raise awareness, and they ended up handing the group over to me. So Dad and I, it was Dad's idea, and I started this group. It's a volunteer group. It's called Andrea's Angels. It's a group chat in Messenger. We have, over 300 members now. They're volunteers that help us raise awareness for Andrea. Anyone that wants to join can comment, or message me. Just let me know that you want to join Andrea's Angels, and I will add you. So the purpose of that group is to raise awareness. We brainstorm ideas and write podcasters like yourself. This podcast came from Andrea's Angels, actually. And anyone else that we think can help us raise awareness about Andrea. So another thing I do is I'll share any posts. On a daily basis, I at least create one post or several, and I share the post to Andrea's Angels, and their job is to share it all over social media so that it's not just me doing the sharing. I've had my Facebook account get locked out multiple times because it thinks I'm spam because of how much I share every day.
Okay.
So I have people helping me with that, so it's not just on me. And then also I've learned Instagram recently, Twitter, Reddit, and Discord, just to reach different. On TikTok, just to reach different audiences. So you can find me on any of those. Okay.
All right. Very good. So listeners, please, as we lead up to this episode, by the time everybody hears our voices, I will have posted to all those accounts, linked to them one way or the other on Facebook and elsewhere for sure. Mike and Aaron, any final words before we complete this interview?
Andrew, if you can hear me at all, please let us know that you're okay. I love you, and I really hope that you're okay.
Yes, I would like to tell him some good things about Andrea. That she was a fantastic sister and a second mother to her two sisters. Obviously, she would search for missing people even though they were strangers. So she would search for anybody that is your listener if she had the chance to do it. She was a very caring neighbor that took dinner over to a retired vet. She was a women's advocate. She took 10 women to an attorney and accompanied them to court to help them with their very bad situations. She did many, many things to help other people, even though she was in a completely distressed situation herself in almost every way possible. And I kind of came up with the essence of her message if your listeners would even have listened to this. But Andrea's message would be, and I thought long and hard on this, is that we as people should help people now when they need it, not wait till our life is perfect where we accumulated riches or you're retired or it's the perfect time and never arises. Help people now when they need it is what Andrea would tell your listeners.
I think that's a great message, Mike. I appreciate that. That is thank you. Okay. Well, I can tell both of you that, and I say this in almost any interview, and I'm going to say it again, that Mike and Aaron, this is just the beginning of us knowing each other. I, of course, hope that Andrea is found alive tomorrow. That's what I always hope for, but if that doesn't happen, and this goes a little longer than that, I want you to know that I'll always be here as a resource. If things are going on and you need an opinion on something, of course, our discussions would totally be off the record. If you need somebody that you can trust or, somebody to talk about something, I have a lot of experience, 240 disappearances now, knowing people just like yourselves. I will give you my best advice. Okay? Anytime. You can call me anytime. So this is just...
And we would appreciate that. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So this is just, I think, the beginning of us knowing each other. And of course, like I said, I hope Andrea is found alive as soon as possible. And I appreciate you both being on this episode of Unfound.
Thank you, and thanks for having us.
Thank you. Definitely thank you for having us and spreading the awareness.
You're welcome. And that was my January 23rd, 2022 dual interview with Michael Knabel, father of Andrea, and Aaron Knabel, sister of Andrea. I thank them both for appearing on this episode. As I mentioned during the interview, I have done a map analysis of the area where Andrea disappeared. I look at the route and surrounding geography from where Aaron lived to where Andrea was staying with her sister and her fiancé. Please find that video on the Unfound podcast channel on YouTube. I listed the disappearances of Jamie Bowen, Layla Faulkner, TJ Murray and Dal Phillips at the beginning of this episode. Like Andrea, they were all going through stuff. Whether that was drug problems, Jamie and Layla, health problems, Dal, or people problems, TJ. So, in your own contemplation of what happened to Andrea, you may want to go back and listen to those episodes again. The problem, those 4 cases are still unsolved. And really, I think if I were to poll all of you asking what happened in each, I would probably get 50-50 splits whether they walked off or got picked up. What may help us, though, is that in those others, we didn't get cell phone information that was helpful. Whereas with Andrea, we have proof that she called at least a couple of people looking for a ride. This would then lend support to the idea that someone picked her up, and something caused Andrea's disappearance after that. And in that way, we may look at Andrea's disappearance like Allie Lowitzer's. Both went missing after talking to people about a ride, and both phones seemingly went off right after those conversations. Likewise, despite their age differences, Allie and Andrea seemed to be going through some tough things before they disappeared. The problem? Allie's case is now over 10 years old and still unsolved, despite her phone information being widely known and the boy's inner life being interviewed. The question is, are the 2 cases similar enough to think that the same thing happened to both females? I'm not sure. You be the judge. Maybe most importantly, we can't forget Andrea's own experiences with missing persons cases. Could this have aided her if she wanted to disappear? I can only speak for myself. After 5 years of doing Unfound, I surely know more than the average person as to what it would take to disappear. So it makes sense to me to believe Andrea's knowledge was similar. Thus, we must consider this. Could one of our own done this all on our own? I'll leave the theorizing up to you. And that's the program. If you found it informative, please go to the app that you use to listen to Unfound and give this podcast a nice review. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Dentzel, and you've been listening to Unfound.